恭敬大德圣听，为此法会，济一切众生，经转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死，离苦得乐。速战无声。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo saranto suchetoye Allahati sanmiao sanputo 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it, and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, Medicine Master Buddha. 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 Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one, Medicine Master does come one. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, Amitabha, welcome back. This is lecture number 162 of the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra. Okay, now as I get today's slides up, I want to see if anyone has any questions. Any questions you can ask in English or in any other language that you prefer. No question? Or you can type it into the chat box. Okay, all right, now where are we? Okay, last week, a quick recap. We are on this part of the sutra where the Buddha tells Manjushri Bodhisattva, says if good men and women, which is all of us, of pure faith, who wish to make offerings to the world-honored one, Medicine Master Vaidurya like Tathagata, that's Medicine Master Buddha. He says, what should we do? We can make an image of the Buddha, we can arrange a pure and clean dais, we can offer flowers, we can burn incenses, and then for 7 days and 7 nights, we can observe the 8 precepts and eat pure food. Then we have to bathe until we are clean and fragrant and put on clean clothes. And then our attitude to living beings. Why is he saying all this? Well, it's because when we have to do things like that, it means that we realize that we need help. And in situations like that, you want to know how to do things right? You don't want to do things wrong because you want a response, right? Okay, so then the Buddha continues saying you can play musical instruments, you can sing praises, and then he says, then they will obtain whatever they seek. That's the last paragraph on your screen. Those who seek long life will attain long life. You seek wealth, you gain wealth. Who doesn't want those things, right? Okay, so now, and then let me see. Let me just give me a moment. Let me find my slides. Okay, then we went to see what Bodhidharma had to say. Because if we take the sutra at face value, that means we just say, oh, we offer flowers or we offer incense.
When was the first time you go for a surgery ever?
Okay, sorry about that.
No,
you all can. Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Ang not to unmute your microphone if possible. Okay, now let me see, what was my train of thought? If we take the sutras at face value, we're not doing the sutras any justice, especially Mahayana sutras. Why? Because Mahayana sutras, they assume, okay, that you already have the Theravada suttas as your foundation. You can kind of think of Mahayana sutras as, let me see, what's a good example, like university. Okay, university level, and then the Theravada suttas or the Pali canon is high school level. So when you go to university, you know, they have requirements that you must have at least a high school diploma, or you must have finished high school before you can get secondary school, before you can enter university, right? So it's kind of like that, except that we have access to the Mahayana sutras, and if we don't try to understand the deeper meaning of the Mahayana sutras, then we can get lost, and all our effort will be to waste. So Bodhidharma says the sutras of the Buddha contain countless metaphors. And he says, because mortal have shallow minds and don't understand anything deep. When he says anything deep, he means the wisdom of the Buddha. That means our inherent wisdom. So he says, that's why the Buddha used the tangible to represent the sublime. Sublime means it cannot be put into words, because if it can be put into words, it's no longer the Buddha's wisdom. The Buddha's wisdom is beyond what we can comprehend with our conscious mind, which is not our true mind. Okay, so that's where we were. All right, now we are going to something new. Okay, so Bodhidharma says mortals who don't understand true practice and blindly perform good deeds are born into the 3 higher states of existence within the 3 realms. And what are these 3 higher states? He says, those who blindly perform the 10 good deeds and foolishly seek happiness are born as gods in the realm of desire. Now, normally, this would be kind of a good thing. You know, everyone wants to be reborn in the heavens. So normally this is seen as a positive. And even in the sutras, the Buddha would always encourage people to practice so that they can get a heavenly rebirth. And there's a sutra that says people want 5 things. There's 5 good things that people want, and one of them is a heavenly rebirth. In other words, you don't want to worry about what happens when you start thinking about death. When you realize death is upon you, you want to not be filled with anxiety. But then we have some context here, which is blindly perform. So the 10 good deeds by itself is a really good thing. Okay, the 10 good deeds is an excellent, practice. Without the 10 good deeds, we will never be able to end birth and death, right? So Bodhidharma says, who blindly perform the 10 good deeds. That means people who understand what the 10 good deeds are and they follow it, but they don't understand the deeper significance or intention behind the 10 good deeds. Okay, so people like that foolishly seek happiness. Says what happened to these people? They're born as gods in the realm of desire. Okay, which I said is already normally a good thing, but given the context of how Bodhidharma has framed it, we know there's something wrong here. Then he says, those who blindly observe the 5 precepts. Now we all know the 5 precepts is a good thing. Okay, all lay Buddhist disciples should, after they've taken refuge and when they find that the time is right, they should take the 5 precepts. But Bodhidharma says, those who blindly observe the 5 precepts and foolishly indulge in love and hate. What is love and hate? Love and hate is also known as the human condition. It says, are born as men or women in the realm of anger. So like all of us right now. And third, he says, and those who blindly cling to the phenomenal world, believe in false doctrines, and pray for blessings are born as demons in the realm of delusion. Sometimes you hear this being described as externalists. It means they look outwards for salvation. Like say in theistic religions where there are gods, or monotheistic where there's a single god. So these are the 3 highest highest states of existence. And then he says, and what are the 3 lower states? They are where those who persist in poison thoughts and evil deeds are born. This is the opposite of the 10 good deeds. Okay, so it says, those who karma from greed is greatest become hungry ghosts. Those who karma from anger is greatest become sufferers in hell. And those who karma from delusion or ignorance is greatest become beasts or animals. And then Bodhidharma says, these 3 lower states together with the previous 3 higher states form the 6 states of existence. From this, you should realize that all karma, painful or otherwise, comes from your own mind. I'm not sure if Sri Ling mentioned, well, maybe it was in another discussion group that we had, was it yesterday, about the 6 states of existence. This is what it means. Okay, this is in the realm of form. Let me see. I have to confirm that. Anyway, okay. Oh, let me see who's online. All right, Saha is online. Good, because Saha had a question before, and I've been waiting for Saha to come back so I can answer a question. She's probably forgotten about her question, but I'll reserve a few minutes. Okay, so why is Bodhidharma saying all this? Why is he framing the 5 precepts in a way that could be not good, and the 10 wholesome deeds in a way that's also not good? All right. To understand this, we can look at the Shurangama Sutra, and then once we are done with the Shurangama Sutra, we come back to our Medicine Master Buddha Sutra, and we look at what it means when the Buddha says to make images of the Buddha. Okay. But for now, all right, to understand why this is so important, let's move to the Shurangama Sutra. Now, what I've done is I've taken different parts of the sutra, but it's all on the same subject. Okay, it is all the Buddha speaking, emphasizing to Ananda where Ananda has gone wrong in his practice and understanding of the Dharma. It comes from different pages. I have put down the pages where I have extracted, but in terms of the topic of what we're discussing, you'll find that it's seamless. Okay, all right. Oh, and this is the latest Shurangama Sutra edition from BTTS, our publishing house. I can't remember the date. I think it was 2009, the one that's dark blue and on the cover. Okay, so on page 13, the Buddha says, when Ananda saw the Buddha, he bowed and wept in sorrow. Why did he do that? Okay, let me finish reading. He bowed and wept in sorrow. He regretted that since time without beginning, he had devoted himself to erudition, but had not fully developed his practice on the path. Okay, what is erudition? Erudition is, Shifu says there are three kinds of wisdom, three kinds of prajna. One is literary prajna, which we get from listening and reading the sutras, for example. One is, oh my God, does anyone know what are the three types of prajna? Hold on, let me see. I think I can find this fairly quickly. But if anyone,
there's literary prajna and contemplative. I'm sorry. I'll just say. I'm sorry.
okay. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Ron, you're right. Number one is the prajna of language, which is what we are doing right now. We are investigating wisdom through language. So language can mean hearing and reading. Then the prajna of contemplative illumination. That's what happens when you sit down and meditate. And then the prajna of the characteristic of actuality. That means true prajna, true wisdom. Okay, so those are the three prajnas. Now, prajna is Sanskrit for wisdom. So, why is Ananda weeping in sorrow? It's because if you have read Shurangama Sutra, you will have known that the whole reason the Buddha spoke the Shurangama Sutra, the occasion for the sutra to be spoken, is that Ananda went on alms round by himself, which is not something that is recommended. If you are a monk, you want to go for alms round, you shouldn't go by yourself. Anyway, Ananda went for alms round. And by this time, Ananda was already a stream enterer, that means a first stage arhat. He came by a house, and there was a courtesan in the house, a lady of the night. And when this lady looked at Ananda, she fell in love with him immediately. You know, the house, they say love at first sight. This was a case of love at first sight. And why did this happen is because they were husband and wife for a long time. Shufu said 500 lifetimes. Usually when they say 500 lifetimes, it just means it's a long time. They've been husband and wife for very long, for many, many times. That's what 500 means. Not exactly 500. Anyway, this girl forced her mother. She said she would take her own life if the mother did not help her get Ananda as a husband. So that the mother managed to put Venerable Ananda under a spell, a mantra. But the Buddha discovered what was going on, and he sent Manjushri Bodhisattva to break the spell and bring Ananda and the courtesan in front of the Buddha. Okay, so that's where we're at. So Ananda was almost in trouble. He was going to get into trouble and break his precepts if not for the Buddha and Manjushri Bodhisattva intervening. All right. Now the Buddha said to Ananda, since time without beginning, all beings, because of the many distortions in their minds, have been creating seeds of karma which then grow and ripen naturally like a cluster of fruit on a ruksa tree. Now a ruksa tree apparently, okay, it's let me see, it has fruits that come in clusters of three. Okay, and why did the Buddha use the ruksa tree? Well, because its seeds are used as our chanting beads or counting beads. And also the tree cluster of fruits, let me see, is I think it represents ignorance, karma, and ignorance, intention or intentional action, and okay, let me make this easier. Sorry, it represents ignorance, cause and effect. Okay, ignorance, cause and effect. And three fruits on a stem, they are joined together. So because of ignorance, we create karma, and then we have to reap the effects of our karmic intentions. All right, so that's why the Buddha used this. Now, this is very interesting because Venerable Ananda, okay, of all the Buddha's disciples, he is foremost in learning. We have the sutras with us thanks to Venerable Ananda, because they held after the Buddha's passing into Nirvana, there was a council where I think 500 arhats. I don't remember. I studied this, but I can't recall the exact number. Anyway, it's not important. The arhats came together in a council, and because of Venerable Ananda's memorization of, I think, almost all the discourses spoken by the Buddha. Because what happened is that Venerable Ananda, as a Buddha's attendant, everywhere the Buddha went, Venerable Ananda was there, and he could hear all the Buddha's discussions and teachings. And for those that he, excuse me, and for those where he wasn't present at all, and the Buddha came back, the Buddha would tell him what happened. So, because of Venerable Ananda's memorization of all the sutras, and not just that, he understood them as well. Not only did he memorize it, but he could also explain, because he understood what was going on. That we have all the sutras in our Tripitaka thanks to him. Now, what is interesting, I was saying, is despite Venerable Ananda's vast learning, there is no one who can compare to him in his understanding and his memorization of all the discourses. Still, as we shall find out, it is not enough. Okay, not enough. And later we'll find out too, what about reciting sutras and when we make offerings and all that. You know, if all this is still not enough, then, you know, what is enough, right? Okay, now, the Buddha explains, he says, people who undertake a spiritual practice but who fail to realize the ultimate enlightenment, people such as the hearers of the teaching and the solitary sages, as well as celestial beings and others, such as demon kings and members of the demons' retinues who follow wrong paths, all fail because they do not understand two fundamentals and are mistaken and confused in their practice. Now, this statement of the Buddha is very deep because he includes even the arhats as well as the Prachika Buddhas, and then the devas in the different heavens, and the externalities like such as the demon kings. And the Buddha says they all fail. They will never gain full enlightenment. Full enlightenment here means the enlightenment of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, even the arhats. Okay. Buddha says, and this is where the famous analogy comes from, says they're like someone who cooks sand, hoping to prepare a delicious meal. Even if the sand were cooked for eons numberless as motes of dust, no meal will result from it. Okay, now, there are a lot of people who come to the temple. I used to be one of them, or I'm one of them. I remember going to CDTB and trying to be really sincere. You know, when I put my palms together, no gaps in my fingers, fingers perfectly straight, right at the right height, not too high, not touching, almost touching your nose, but not too low either, not at the navel, but just right, you know, and trying to be really concentrated, trying to follow along verse by verse. Sometimes when you recite the sutras, I tell myself, oh, I have to be very sincere. I have to recite it perfect. You know, I have to recite every word. I can't miss every word. And during the bowing of the 10,000 Buddhas, repentance, I will say, I can't miss any bow. I have to bow every single bow. So there are a lot of people like that. They're very sincere. They come in front of the Buddha in the Buddha hall. You can see they are trying really, really hard. But then the Buddha says, if you don't understand two fundamentals, then it's like you can be as sincere as you want. You know, you can stand there unmoving, you know, be so sincere that you don't move at all. Even if your feet hurt, Your legs hurt, you don't move. Even if your back cramps up, you continue standing straight because you want to be sincere. Buddha says, well, it's like cooking sand. No matter how sincere you are, it's still going to be sand. In other words, the Buddha is trying to tell us about cause and effect. All our practices are based on cause and effect. Okay, something will come from something that we do. It is not magic. It is not superstition. It is not what you believe will happen. But it comes back to simple cause and effect. All right? All right. Now, so the Buddha says, Ananda, what are the two fundamentals? The first is the mind that is the basis of the mind that is the basis of death and rebirth, and that has continued since time without beginning. This mind is dependent on perceived objects, and it is this mind that it is this mind that you and all beings make use of, and that each of you consider to be your own nature. What is this that the Buddha is referring to, this mind, is the mind right now that you are using to listen when you want to meditate and you try to concentrate, or when you want to recite the Buddha's name, is that mind. Okay? This mind is referring to our mundane mind. And sometimes when you read the sutras and it talks about the skandhas or the aggregates or consciousness, this is it. This is what the Buddha is speaking of. Okay? We shall not go into too much detail. That's for another topic. But the Buddha is making is distinguishing, drawing a line. Excuse me, just give me a moment. Buddha is trying to make a point, because if we use the mundane mind to practice, we will never be able to end birth and death. At least not in the birth and death of what the Buddha means. It's like you are in a dream. If you never wake up, you'll never understand that everything in your dream is false. So in our dreams, a dream is a great analogy or metaphor, because in our dreams, we think we are using our eyes, our ears, our nose. We think that the people we are interacting with are real. We think that the sounds we hear in our dreams are real. But it all just comes from the mind. It's not real at all. And the worst thing is, we think we are awake. Right? So that's what the Buddha means when he talks about this mind that we're using right now. And why it's often said that until you have broken your ignorance, we are all sleeping. We are all just in a dream. Okay? Now let's go to the second fundamental. The second fundamental is full awakening, which also has no beginning. It is the original and pure essence of nirvana. It is the original understanding, the real nature of consciousness. This is when we have woken up from a dream state and we realize, oh, I've been dreaming all along. Now I'm awake. That's what the Buddha is referring to. All conditioned phenomena arise from it, and yet it is among those phenomena that beings lose track of it. All right? Again, using the dream analogy, you fall asleep. From your own mind, we start to dream of things, and then we get lost in the dream. We accept the dream to be real. That's what the Buddha means. The Buddha says they have lost track of this fundamental understanding, though it is active in them all day long. And because they remain unaware of it, they make the mistake of entering the various destinies. So it's because of this dream-like state that we mistaken to be real, we create the 6 destinies. All right. Now, I'm not sure how many of you meditate, but there are times when you can actually, if it's not permanent, if it's permanent, then you enter the stream of the sages. You're at least a first stage arhat. But until then, sometimes your mind will stop. Your conscious mind will stop. The 6 conscious. sixth consciousness, our conscious mind will stop. How can it stop? Well, because it's conditioned phenomena. Conditioned phenomena is like a set of it's like a programming. And if you remove one of the supporting factors, it stops. It doesn't work anymore. So like say a rice cooker, a rice cooker, you need rice, you need water, and you need electricity. If you take away one of those things, you won't have cooked rice. So it's just like that. Now, for those of you, okay, you will understand when your mind stops and you see your true nature, it's actually you feel at this if it's the most normal thing in the world. At that time, you will feel like you're truly you for the first time in your life. You feel like, oh, this is who I actually am. And then you realize that your true mind is there with you all the time. It has always been there. It has never left you for a moment. But we fail to recognize it. Okay, so what is it like to realize that? Well, think of it like breathing. We breathe all the time, right? Most of the time, we don't even have to pay attention to our breathing. We don't even realize we are breathing. We just breathe automatically. But if you want to, and you pay attention, then you start to breathe. I remember when I was very young, I had this very silly thought. I said, oh, what if I stop paying attention to my breathing? Will that mean I will stop breathing and I will die? And that got me a bit worried until, excuse me, let me drink some water. Until, because I was very young, I got distracted by whatever it was next through my senses that distracted me, and I forgot all about breathing, and I started breathing again. Okay, now taking that example, imagine that someone who has grown up and has never realized that they've been breathing. They just never paid attention to their breathing. Okay, they breathe, but they never know. It never occurred to them that they're breathing until one day someone says, "What do you think you're doing?" The air coming out from your nose or your mouth and in and out. You are breathing all the time, and then they say, "Oh." Then they realize, oh yeah, this is what I do, and I do it automatically. It's there all the time. Just that I've never paid attention to it. I never realized it was there. It's kind of like that. When you uncover your wisdom for the first time, that's how it feels. It's like, oh, this is how it is. It's always been there. And it feels like the most normal thing in the world. Because why? For the first time, you've actually woken up. And you can see the difference between our mundane conscious mind, which can only work based on logic, on imagination, on deduction and memory. If it doesn't know something, it doesn't know anything. It has to figure things out. Like when you wake up from a deep sleep and you forget where you are or what time it is, you have to figure things out. That's the mundane mind. Is a really awful state. But our true consciousness doesn't work that way. Our true mind, you just know. You just understand. You don't need layers of understanding to figure something out. You just do. You just see things for what they are. Okay, now going back to our sutra, Shurangama Sutra. So the Buddha says to Ananda, he says, the reason why so many practitioners in the world do not succeed in putting an end to outflows and becoming arhats, though they may have passed through all 9 of the successive stages of samadhi or dhyana, is that they are attached to distorted mental processes that come into being and then cease to be, and they mistake these processes for what is real. That is why, even though you have become quite learned, you have not become a sage. So, even if people get into very deep stages of dhyana, so there are 8 stages of dhyana, and then in the Shurangama Sutra, the Buddha says there are 9. For example, the first stage, Shufu says that, I always get this mixed up because in different sources, sometimes Shufu says in the first dhyana, your breathing stops. But then in the other sources, it is written as in the first dhyana, the pulse or the heartbeat stops. So I read both. So I don't know which is which. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What matters is you can enter the first dhyana. So that's what the Buddha is referring to when he talks about the 9 successive stages of samadhi. All right. And even if you can get into samadhi or the 9 stages of dhyana, the Buddha says it doesn't mean that you can end your outflows, because you still don't understand what is the true mind and what is the false mind. All right. Now, so when Ananda had heard that, he again wept sorrowfully. He then bowed to the ground, then on both knees placed his palms together and said to the Buddha, he says, ever since I followed the Buddha and resolved to enter the monastic life, I have relied on the Buddha's awe-inspiring spirit. I have often thought there is no reason for me to toil at spiritual practice, because I just expected that the dust come one, or the Buddha, would generously transfer some of his samadhi to me. Okay? That's very profound, because the Buddha, Venerable Ananda, being the Buddha's cousin, thought that his special relationship with the Buddha meant that the Buddha could use any of his 10 powers to help Ananda out. And this is very important, because while the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, they can do many wonderful things, all right, there's one thing that they cannot do, which is they cannot control your mind. In your next thought, whether you want to get angry or jealous, or you want to practice patience or loving kindness, only you have the power over your next thought, not the Buddhas, not the Bodhisattvas. They can adjust your conditions. They can try to give you things that make you happy, but they cannot control your mind. And this is why we alone have to do the practice. No one can do the practice. The Buddhas can't save us. Okay, probably in 2 or 3 lectures time, I have a set of slides that explain why doesn't the Buddha just save all of us, like Astor Bodhisattva, save us from the hells, and make us enlightened. Why can't the Buddha or the Bodhisattvas just do that? All right. Now, coming back to our sutra, remember Ananda says, I never realized that in fact, he simply, that means the Buddha, could not stand in for me in body or in mind. Thus I abandoned my original resolve, and though my body has indeed entered the monastic life, my mind has not entered the path. I am like that poor son who ran away from his father. This poor son that ran away from the father is from the Lotus Sutra. Excuse me. Where the son, the father represents the Buddha, and the son represents all of us. And the son left home. And because of the difficulties of life, the son wanted to experience life. And he left home, not leaving home like a monastic, but he left his house, he left the Buddha. And then he forgot who he was. And the father all the time was thinking of the son. The son totally forgot about the father. Not only that, the son totally forgot that he was the heir to the father. And the father was the richest person in probably in the city or more than that. Yeah. So anyway, that's the Lotus Sutra, and that's what Rambo Ananda is referring to. So it says, today I realize that though I am learned, I must as well not have learned anything if I do not practice. Just as someone who only talks of food but never gets full. Sorry for the typo, there's a but that's missing there. Okay. Now I think I have 1 or 2 more slides left. Then the Buddha said to Ananda, you have a keen memory, but it serves only to increase your erudition. You have not yet understood the practice of calming the mind from which subtle insight arises. Therefore, Ananda, the many eons you have spent committing to memory the dust-come-once esoteric inconceivable, wondrous, and majestic Dharma are not equal. Okay, these are eons. Okay, not just in his lifetime right now with Shakyamuni Buddha, but apparently Venerable Ananda has spent many lifetimes doing this before. He says it's not even equal to a single day spent cultivating karma that is free of outflows and is far removed from the two worldly torments of hate and love. Okay, this sounds exactly as what Bodhidharma is saying. I have one last slide of the Shurangama Sutra and then one slide of Shufu's commentary before we get to what Bodhidharma means when he says the sutras talk about
Usher,
creating images. Yes, Ron.
that last slide or last paragraph, it says, have not, therefore, Ananda, the many eons you committed to memory, the duskam ones, esoteric, wondrous, and majestic Dharma are not equal to one day spent cultivating karma that is free from outflow and is far removed from the two worldly torments of norm. So just that the last part of the sentence where it says, spend one day cultivating karma that is free from outflows and far removed from the two worldly torments. That's the takeaway, isn't it? That when we practice, that is the practice, right? That the Buddha is talking about. The practice where you when you choose your actions to do, your intentions to do, you choose those uh, cultivating karma that is free from outflows and far removed from two worldly torments. I'm sorry, I don't know how to phrase phrase my statement, but is that what the Buddha is trying to tell us? That even though we don't have the inherent mind, the true mind when we're cultivating, but if we have this mundane mind to cultivate, that we should use the mundane mind to think carefully about choosing how the actions that we should take or the karma that we should try to cultivate so that there's no outflow and it doesn't cause the karma to give us the result of love and hate, right?
Okay, yes and no. You are correct in the broad sense. The idea is correct. But if you want to be 100% correct, then the conscious mind that we're using to practice, when we do chant meditation, when we are supposed to be meditating, then even we have to be aware that any form of thought, any form of idea that comes through the mind is false, is an outflow. So what you want is to hold the mind down, say by reciting the Buddha's name or by being mindful of your breathing, and if you can understand that any movement of the mind is false, then when you enter the dhyanas or the 9 stages of samadhi, whenever the mind moves, you will not mistake it for the true mind. Because that's, if you read the chapter on the 50 skandha demon states of the Shurangama Sutra, people go wrong in their meditation because they don't realize that any state that they get, any movement of the mind or from any of the senses are still conditioned phenomena. And because they fail to realize it as conditioned phenomena and they mistake it for a true a true state, then they fall back into ignorance. Does that make sense, Ron?
Maybe I'll just continue to listen, but all I can see is that, or all I can tell is that as a practitioner, that it's hard to separate um, what we what comes into our mind. The mundane mind is all we have to go on, and it's not easy to. I mean, like it seems like cultivation is I don't know what I'm lost for words this morning, but it's like we're not. I mean, I'm making no progress in it at all. Because of what you've just presented in these slides here.
Okay, let me, all right, let me do this then. Let me finish this slide and, okay, actually we've done this slide. Let me finish the next two slides, all right? And then we'll come back to your question to clarify, okay? All right, now, here the Buddha says to Ananda, you have already reached the level of one who has entered the stream of the sages, meaning Ananda is a stream enterer, the first stage of the four stages of arhats. And you have abandoned the deluded views held by beings in the three realms of existence. When you become a first stage arhat, you are free from the three lower states of existence. You can never be born as an animal in the hell realm and as a hungry ghost. Impossible, because you have eliminated those factors of ignorance permanently. And then as a stream enterer or first stage arhat, you have up to 7 more lifetimes before you become a full-fledged arhat. It depends. It's not fixed. Some people, I guess, if you are in, remember Ananda's case, and you don't know how to distinguish between the true mind and the false mind, say in your meditation, then you might take 7 lifetimes because your progress will be very gradual. But if you do know what to look up for in your meditation, like Ron's question, then maybe in 1 lifetime or less. Lesser meaning, like in Venerable Ananda's case, he became a full arhat before his lifespan was ended. So he didn't have to go through 7 lifetimes. Okay. Now, then the Buddha said, but you still do not understand the illusory habits which you have accumulated in life after life since time without beginning. In other words, you try to explain to someone, imagine you can go into someone's dream and tell them, hey, you're dreaming. They're not going to believe you. They say, no, I'm not dreaming. I'm awake. You are the one who's dreaming. They will say, what do you mean the people I'm talking to is not real? Nonsense. So that's what it means. Then the Buddha says, you will need to practice even more to get rid of the subtle aspects of your habits as they come into being, abide, decay, and perish. Now, the word subtle here is very important because subtle here means even you are not aware of it. You are not aware of your habits. That's why it's so difficult to overcome. All right, now one last slide. Shuvu's commentary says, but Ananda used only his conscious mind in whatever he did. For instance, when he listened to sutras, he used his mind to remember the principles the Buddha spoke, like what we are doing right now. But the conscious mind, which remembered the principles, cannot lead to the fundamental solution. That's the problem. So when someone is dreaming, they can, in their dreaming state, unless they wake up, whatever mind that they use is all just not real. Whatever practices they do in a dream, they're not real. He has to wake up to find out what's real. Let's say in his dream, you bow, you recite the sutras. Unless it's going to help you wake up, you can do that all you want. You're just going to continue staying in your dream. Okay, now I realize that we have a bit of time left. It's 10:20 right now. Let me ask if anyone else has any questions for now. Anyone?
Amitabha Dharma Master, I have a question, but I think I'm gonna type it because I have to think about the question the way I ask it.
Okay, all right. Now, maybe before going to Ron's question, okay, because I promised we we're going to look at what Bodhidharma means when the sutras talked about making images. Let's do that first, and then we can revisit this next week as well. So the Buddha say, Bodhidharma says sutras of the Buddha contains countless metaphors. We've gone through this slide, so I'm going to skip this slide because we've gone through it before. Now, Bodhidharma here talks about casting statues, but it's just a different perspective. The principle is the same: making images of the Buddha or Buddhas. All right. So Bodhidharma says, casting statues refers to all practices cultivated by those who seek enlightenment. The Tathagata's sublime form cannot be represented by metal or images. Those who seek enlightenment regard their bodies as the furnace, the Dharma as the fire, wisdom as the craftsmanship, and the 3 sets of precepts and 6 paramitas as the mold. You see how Bodhidharma reframes casting images, casting statues, sorry. So let's say if you're talking about images or painting, you can say that the Dharma would be what? The Dharma would be maybe the watercolors. Wisdom would still be craftsmanship, the skill. And the 3 sets of precepts and 6 paramitas would be, say, the brush or the subject that you want to paint. And then Bodhidharma says they smell and refine the true Buddha nature within themselves and point into the mold formed by the rules of discipline. Okay, so what he's doing is he's taking an external practice and is moving it inwards. So you could be someone either painting images of Buddhas or sculpting images of Buddhas or casting statues of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And you do this because you believe in the sutras. The sutras say if you make an image of the Buddha, you will get a long list of benefits. And then suddenly here comes Bodhidharma and he says, oh, good. You're doing all these external works, but don't forget the internal. As you're doing the external, what you should be doing for the internal, and then he explains. All right, and he says, acting in perfect accordance with the Buddha's teaching, they naturally create a perfect likeness. The eternal sublime body isn't subject to conditions or decay. If you seek the truth but don't learn how to make a true likeness, what would you use as in its place? Makes perfect sense. You want to seek enlightenment, you want to end birth and death, who better to follow than the Buddha? You want to emulate someone, the sutras, the Jataka tales, they're all full of stories of how the Buddha became a Buddha. That's why we have vows. That's why we read vows of Guanyin, we have vows of the Buddhas, Medicine Master Buddha. Vows are how they became Buddhas. So they give you an idea. It's like you want to be rich, you go and read Warren Buffett's biography or autobiography and try to learn his skills or his secrets. That's what the sutras are there for. You want to emulate the Buddha, the sutras show us how. Okay, so we've talked about the 3 Dharma ages. Proper Dharma age, the Dharma image age, and the Dharma ending age. So when I was young, I used to play squash. And one of my heroes at the time was a squash player known as Jahangir Khan. Jahangir Khan, even up to now, is regarded as the best squash player ever to live up to now. His records have never been, never been matched. I think he something like 555 games unbeaten. In 555, the word just escaped me. He won 555 games in a row. Okay, that's a huge deal. So anyway, when Jahangir Khan was very young, he had very poor health. Yeah, and then as he was growing up, he endured a lot of difficulty, like his brother and his coach, they died, and other difficulties. So if I use him as an example, okay, in the proper Dharma age, I would say I want to be just like Jahangir Khan. Why? Because he's the best. He's like, he's the best of the best. There's no one better than him. So I want to be just like him, because why? I'm a young boy. And when you're young, you have role models to look up to emulate. So if I was in the proper Dharma age, it means I was smart and I understood what was going on. I would read about him. I would know how he succeeded despite all the hardships that he had to go through, and how he became a successful player, how he trained, what he ate, how he viewed life, like wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to run, to train, when his shoes were broken up, it never stopped him from playing, when his racket broke a string, and he never stopped practicing, he continued playing, practicing regardless. In the proper Dharma age, I would just know that he's someone to follow. I would just follow him. Okay? Now, if I was in the Dharma image age, and it's maybe about 1,000 years after Jahangir Khan's time, I would go to the squash center to train, but I would get distracted by friends, by other things, making jokes, watching movies. And then a very wise coach would say, look at all these youngsters nowadays. They have forgotten about the great Jahangir Khan. So what would he do? He would put up posters of Jahangir Khan on the walls, right? Excuse me. In the proper Dharma age, people didn't need posters of Jahangir Khan. You just mention his name. You don't even have to mention his name. Everyone knew him, and they just followed. But in the Dharma image age, we needed posters to remind ourselves, why am I here? Is to follow Jahangir Khan, so I shouldn't get distracted by my friends who want to go and play some other sports, or want to go and have fun. No, I'm here to train. So looking at the image of Jahangir Khan, I would understand that I'm here for training. I would not forget about the spirit of why I'm here, to play squash, and I will train. Now, coming to the Dharma ending age, which is where I am right now, okay, I will go to the squash center, and all the posters of Jahangir Khan are still there. Okay, in my heart, I will still say, I want to be just like Jahangir Khan. But what do? I emulate the form of Jahangir Khan. That means if he were to use a particular brand of squash racket, I want to buy that same brand. If he was famous for wearing tattered shoes because he was poor, he wasn't poor. Okay, I'm just making this up. So let's say he was wearing tattered shoes to play because he it didn't stop him, and I would purposely not change my shoes even if I could afford to buy new shoes. Why? Because I want to look just like Jahangir Khan. I want to follow his example, but I don't follow the spirit. I follow the look, I follow the form. So it's like casting statues. I cast statues, but I forget about my inner statue and how internally I need to practice as well. I just do the outer form. Okay, so it's kind of like that now. That's why Bodhidharma has to remind, and Bodhidharma time was the Dharma image age, not even the Dharma ending age. And he already had to remind the monks, says what it means when the sutras say a simple thing. Very simple thing, casting statues of the Buddha or making images of the Buddha. He had to remind the monks what it really meant. Okay, now coming next week, we'll look at incense. Okay, we'll look at casting images. Next week, we'll look at incense. But for now, let me go back to Ron's question and show you this. Ron. Yes,
I have a
Alex.
question.
Yes.
Where do you get these Bodhidharma texts from?
Oh, okay.
The
Bodhidharma.
references.
Bodhidharma, there's very little teachings from Bodhidharma except for 3 sermons that he had: the breakthrough sermon, the blood sermon, and I can't remember what's the other sermon. And you can look up online. One of the translations that I use is translated by someone called Red Pine. Red Pine is a very interesting person because he made the documentary Among White Clouds. He went to the Zhongnan Mountains in the footsteps of Elder Master Xin, and he tried to look for hermits. Oh no, sorry, that's not him. He was friends with the director. Sorry, I got mixed up. Okay, Bill Porter is Red Pine, and he's the translator of the Zen teachings of Bodhidharma. You can find that online. And in the 70s, I believe, he was at CDTB for a while. He lived at CDTB for quite a few months. Yeah. So the senior disciples all know him. Yeah. Forget about the Zhongnan Mountains. That was another person who's related to him, but not him. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
I can send you a copy if you want, Alec, later.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So Ron, at our level, okay, if we want to make sure our meditation is successful, last week I shared this. The Buddha's formula is you start with precepts. But precepts don't just mean like 5 precepts. Okay, precepts means overall your character, you as a person. It means, for example, the 5 precepts, right? When I took the 5 precepts, it was, when I think it's a symptom of the Dharma ending age. When I took the 5 precepts, it was all about avoiding hells. You don't want to create any unwholesome karma, because you're afraid of falling into the hells. There's a lot of fear. Maybe it's a Chinese thing. They use fear to talk about the 5 precepts. And it can get very technical, especially when it comes to the 8 precepts as well. It can get very technical. But if you understand the Mahayana sutras, for example, the Bodhisattvas, they hold precepts on behalf of all living beings. What does that mean? Well, where do precepts come from? Precepts come from your relationships. When you're sitting in the cave by yourself, there's no need to hold precepts. You're already so-called holding the precepts. You may not be developing any relationship skills, but at least you're not against the 5 precepts, But precepts come, your skill in the precept increases and your virtue increases as a person through relationships. That's how you become a better person. So the best way to understand precepts is if we can explain it to like a 10-year-old boy, which is what I was forced to do. For many years, I was always very upset with the fact that I did not know how to explain the 5 precepts to people who were not Buddhists. Especially for if you're a college student and you want to maintain the 5 precepts and you don't drink or you don't eat meat and all your friends are, and they're asking, what's wrong with you? Why are you so weird? All the ways I've been taught about the 5 precepts, people would just say, okay, you're afraid of committing evil karma, you don't want to fall into the hells, and maybe you want to be compassionate, but it's got nothing to do with them. To all the people that you're talking to, it seems as if none of the precepts has anything to do with them. It's like you're doing it for only your selfish reasons. At least that was my experience in learning about the 5 precepts. But then at Berkeley Monastery, every year there's a school called Piedmont Middle School. They would send their students, about 10 or 11 years old, 300 to 500 of them. There are so many of them, we have to hold 2 sessions because they fill up the entire Buddha hall. And one day, one of the kids asked me a question, said, what does it mean to be a Buddhist? And maybe because I was thinking about I was always irritated because I couldn't justify. I knew the 5 precepts was good, but I was, even as a monk, I couldn't justify or make sense of the 5 precepts to non-Buddhists until that time. And it just, suddenly it just makes sense. So I said, okay, who in your life that are people that you really care for? And they're all children. I would say your parents, mommy and daddy. You say yes, mommy, daddy, grandmother, grandfather. Some of them say yes, and some of them will say my pets. My dog, my pet rabbit, my younger brother. Things like people they care for. Now, and I asked them. I say, okay, as the people that you care for go through life, they go to work, they go to school, they meet people. Who are the people that you want them to meet? Do you always want them to meet people that will never harm them? So everywhere they go, they feel safe? And they all say, yes, of course, yes. So as you go by the precepts, you want them to meet people who will never lie to them. So they don't have to, everything they hear, they don't have to second guess whether it's real or not, or if someone's trying to cheat them, let me see, killing, lying, stealing, and another one. You don't want them to meet anyone who would steal their things. Then intoxicants will be, I didn't really talk to them about, I talked to them about intoxicants. You don't want them to marry someone who's addicted to substances. And sexual misconduct, I say you don't want anyone to cheat on them, to lose their trust. And they all say yes. And I said, well, then if you want your loved ones to be always surrounded by people with that kind of behavior, then how should you treat them? I asked them. And then they all were very quiet because they realized, they said, it's easy to think of other people around their loved ones, but when they have to reflect internally as to how they treat the people they care for. So I told them, that's what it means to be a Buddhist. And it's not easy. So then, on the spot, I realized, now I have a way to explain to people, especially college students, when they want to explain to people why they hold the precepts, is because they care for the people around them. So even if you are Catholic, even if you are Hindu, they cannot find any fault with why you hold the 5 precepts. In fact, they will feel humble. It's such a logical argument that if you say, well, people, when they get married, they should hold the 5 precepts for each other, no one can say no. When you have children, when you have a child, you want to hold the precepts for your child, no one can say no. Why? Because it just makes sense. That's what makes you human. So that's why I say 5 precepts is the minimum you need to be reborn as a human being. Okay, there's a lot more I can talk about 5 precepts, but that's not why we're here. Anyway, why I'm talking about precepts from that sense is because when you practice right, you understand the spirit behind the practice. It's not just about you, but it's about a lot of other things, other people, understanding the spirit of the practice. The Buddha says you don't have to wish for freedom of remorse. Freedom of remorse is, say, like you fight with someone, you argue with someone, and you say hurtful words, and then you hang up. And then before you have a chance to apologize, the person has died. That kind of remorse, but also small things, like saying things that you go to a shop and the person doesn't like you, who's selling you something, and you get upset at the person, and you say something, and for the rest of the day, that your mind keeps on replaying that. You should have said this, you have said that, or how can the person say this, or it's endless. Things like that. If you can eliminate the cause for things like that, the Buddha says the effect of remorse is just not there. So the Buddha says you don't have to wish for no remorse. Naturally, you have no remorse. And then when you have no remorse, joy or gladness naturally appears. When joy and gladness naturally appears, your body becomes very soft. And then you have rapture. Rapture is when you have your soft body, your energy flows well. When you sit in meditation, your body doesn't fight against you. Why? Because you're not tense. Your muscles are not tense. And then it goes on. I already talked about it last week. Then you get tranquility, which is a state of mind, and then happiness, which is also a state of mind. And then because you are happy, and the happy is a quiet kind of happy, not crazy happy, it allows your mind to rest. You can concentrate. And when you can concentrate, you have the wisdom of seeing things as they are. You know what to look out for, the difference between the false mind and the true mind. That's where you place your concentration at. So what you do, Ron, is, oh, excuse me. So what you do when you reach that stage of your concentration is that any state that you encounter, any feeling, any thought, any idea, you push it away. Why? Because it's you know it's still conditioned phenomena. You are still dreaming. Anything in your dream is not real. You don't want to get attached to it. So the Shurangama Sutra says sometimes you hear voices or sutras, or you see Buddhas or demons and all that. It's just in your dream state. There's still conditioned phenomena. So you push it away. And that's how you can uncover your true wisdom. And then when you can, so that's how the formula works. So there's this sutra I wanted to share with you. Okay, let me increase the size. This is called the Velama Sutta. It's if you want to look for it yourself, it's called AN 9.2. 9.20. To cut a long story short, Velama was the Buddha in his past life who gave a very, very great offering. So great that there was, so great that it is, that we can learn about it today. That's how great it was. And it wasn't even in this Buddha's lifetime, which was 3,050 years ago. It happened eons ago. All right. So what I wanted to share is the Buddha is making a point. I'll start here. Is it too small? Can you all read it? Should I make it bigger, larger? Maybe like this. All right. Okay, let me remove that. Okay. So the Buddha is making a point here. Velama's great offering, so great it has almost never been rivaled before. Buddha says, it will be more fruitful to feed one person accomplished in view than that great offering of Velama. Accomplished in view means someone like Venerable Ananda, okay, who is a stream enterer. Then it will be more fruitful to feed one's returner than 100 persons accomplished in view. This is the second stage Arhat. Then third stage Arhat, and then finally perfected one, which is Arhat. Then the Buddha says, it will be more fruitful to feed one independent Buddha or Prachika Buddha than 100 Arhats. And then the Buddha says, it will be more fruitful to feed one realized one Buddha compared to 100 Prachika Buddhas. And then, okay, this is very interesting. The Buddha says, it will be more fruitful to feed the mendicant Sangha headed by the Buddha than to feed one Buddha himself. So meaning, if the Buddha was around, but you feed his monks instead of him, but not without any malice in your heart, you just, the Buddha says, your blessings will be greater than that. Than if you have fed him. Then, if you build a dwelling, that's even better. You build a dwelling for the Sangha, is even better than feeding the Sangha. Now, the next line is very interesting. It says, it will be more fruitful to go for refuge to the Buddha, the teaching of the Dharma and the Sangha with a confident heart than to build a dwelling for the Sangha of the four quarters. And what's even better than that? The next one, undertake the training rules. These are the 5 precepts. So you go, is better than taking refuge. All right. Then What's even better than that? To develop a heart of love. What is heart of love? Loving kindness in your heart, even for just as long as it takes to pull a cow's udder. Milk a cow, yeah, just for that moment, you just pull one time. If you can practice loving kindness, it's even better. Why? Because you need loving kindness to enter the first dhyana. If you don't have loving kindness in your heart, you cannot get concentration. Okay, so when I say precepts as character, loving kindness is there. And then what's even better? Develop the perception of impermanence. What does it mean? Perception of impermanence? That means your mind stops and you can see the difference between your false mind and your true mind, even for a moment. That's what it means. So Ron, I hope that answers your question when you made that reference earlier. Okay, why does the Buddha say it like this? Because even for a finger snap, why even for a finger snap is that great? Is because that marks the real beginning of your journey to Buddhahood. And because of that point in time, you see the difference between your mundane mind and your true mind. You'll be able to walk the path through. But not only that, as the beginning point of, it's like you, is kind of like you enter it's like entering the restaurant. Okay, you haven't eaten yet, but there's no doubt that you're going to eat, because why? You're already in the restaurant. So you may not have even looked at the menu, you may not have understood what the menu means, you haven't even decided what to order yet. But because you have entered the restaurant, all that is going to happen. That's what it means. Okay? That's the logic of the Mahayana. Okay, now we have to end. But before we end, does anyone have any more questions or remarks? Anything you want to bring up or share? Or anything that doesn't make sense?
Well, sure. Doesn't impermanence means birth and death? I mean, rebirth and death? I mean,
Could you repeat your question, Ron? I couldn't get
yeah,
you.
at first that last phrase is like, it's more fruitful to do impermanence, to understand impermanence, than to develop the perception of impermanence. That means, I don't know, the word impermanence means something different to me than what you explained.
Oh,
Impermanence means like, you're gonna, it's a, I think to me, impermanence means birth and death,
it
rebirth
includes
and
that.
death.
It includes that. I would say here, impermanence means the reality of things, condition, phenomena.
Oh,
So
condition. Okay.
it's a very loaded word, I would say.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Now I'm going to end this slideshow. And oh no, I should have ended. I'm so sorry, because our transference of merit is there. Hold on. Okay. We're going to do a different transference. It's called Reflection on Sharing Blessings, and it is used at Abhayagiri Monastery. Apparently, some of you like it a lot, so we will alternate between our usual DRBA one and this one. Okay, I'm going to put my palms together. I'm not going to chant in the style of Abhayagiri because I'm not used to it, so I'm just going to read it. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of Death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, May all desires and attachments quickly cease and all harmful states of mind. Until I realize Nibbana, in every kind of birth, may I have an upright mind with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dharma. The solitary Buddha is my noble Lord. The Sangha is my supreme support. To the supreme power of all this, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. And if you are from the Sri Lanka tradition, it's like the law. You have to say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu after something like this. Okay, now it's time to do our 3 vows. 3 vows to the Buddha. Okay, first vow. Second vow. Third vow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Realm Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Saha, we never got to your question. I didn't see you type it out, and I also didn't show you the slides for your question from a few weeks ago. I'll do that next week. Okay? All right. Amitabha,
Thank you, Dharma
everyone.
Master. Amitabha.
See you all next week.
Amitabha.
Amitofo.